Today on Words and Numbers, hoarding,
perceptions and polling,
football stadia,
and the government shutdown.
All this and more coming up next on Words and Numbers, a Civil original production. Check us out at civil.com. That's CIVL.com.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
It's new and exciting in your world this week, Ant. Come on, tell us something interesting. Tell us something interesting, man. I'm so bored today. Come on.
I love it when I enter an argument with somebody and they end up being the evidence that I was arguing.
Ant, have you been on Twitter again?
I have been. I've been on Twitter. These things pop up. They just ask to be slapped down, right? So this person posts a meme and the caption here is, "People no longer believe working hard will lead to a better life."
I saw that one.
And I said, or perhaps we get so used to our better lives that we no longer recognize them for what they are. And then I give some evidence. Even after adjusting for inflation, today's middle class have better standards of living than did the top 1% of Americans a century ago.
Pretty straightforward.
Straightforward. Now, I was prepared for the guy to come back and say, well, show me evidence, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no. Here comes Slam Dunk. He says, haha, I see you had to go back 100 years. Now try it with the 2010s.
Well, actually.
I said, you're proving my point. I just said that over the course of 100 years, the middle class achieved lives better than the top 1%, and you complained that it didn't take 10 years, making evidence of my point that perhaps we get so used to our better lives, we no longer recognize them for what they are.
Yeah, I'm consistently amazed that people whine, and I mean whine, like little tiny school children, about the evils of capitalism, which incidentally I'm going to talk about in a second too, on their iPhones.
Right, yeah. Yeah, probably sipping Starbucks or, yeah.
Zero self-awareness. I mean, just zero.
Look, I think there's a good middle ground here, and that is to admit, look, yeah, capitalism has flaws. Any system's going to have flaws because it's rife with humans, and humans have flaws. But the question isn't whether capitalism has flaws, it's whether it has more or less flaws than the alternative you're suggesting. And if the alternative you're suggesting is socialism, there's centuries of evidence that capitalism has less flaws.
Yeah, I saw two things this week which really pissed me off.
I'm not done.
Oh, well, by all means. I thought you were.
Because I said...
I thought you had tied it up in a neat little bow there.
Oh, no. I said I'm going to talk about perceptions and polling. That was the perceptions part. Here's the polling thing. This is a poll by Gallup, who I absolutely love. Gallup and Pew, they're just wonderful. They hang out there and they do their thing, and you can argue, I guess, that they're partisan, but I've never seen such an argument. They tend to just tell things like they see them.
They're actually pretty good. Nate Silver, also pretty good. Mm-hmm. Rasmussen, that's where you start to go down a partisan drain.
Yeah. But this was a poll that came out October 21st, 2025. And the question it's getting at is, are you concerned about federal power? They ask this question, do you think the federal government today has about the right amount of power or has too little power or too much power? And here we have the response to too much power. 62% of Americans say the federal government has too much power.
Interesting.
Now you could say, all right, 62%, that's being driven by the Democrats who are losing their minds over Trump. And indeed, if you break this down by party, the Democrats are losing their minds over Trump.
They don't equal 62% of the population.
In Biden's last term, or in the last year of his last term, this question, does the federal government have too much power? Democrats, 25% of them said yes, federal government has too much power. So 75% were saying no, it doesn't have too much. Today, 66%, it's a record high, 66% of Democrats say the federal government has too much power. Mm-hmm. Republicans, 58%. Well over half of Republicans say the federal government has too much power. And who's controlling right now the entire federal government? Republicans.
That is interesting. I wonder what to make of that. And you don't forget, you still have a pretty solid contingent of Republicans who were of the drain the swamp flavor.
Right, yeah.
Right? And those people did believe the federal government, in the form of bureaucracies, had too much power. Now, to my eyesight, they've been disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not exactly sure how I would even start to unpack this number without doing further research.
I spoke to one today, a friend of mine who is, I don't know if he's Republican, but he's certainly Republican-leaning, who I'm pretty sure voted for Trump, but at the very least I know was happy that Trump won, and said to me recently that he's disillusioned, that if he had known all of the stuff that was coming down was going to come down, he would not have been as happy with Trump winning. Now, he didn't go the next step and say, well, I would have voted for the other guy, which, look, you can be upset with and against the things that President Trump is doing without saying, I would have preferred Harris.
Right. Well, I mean, the funny thing about Trump and his loyalists will never admit this, but domestically, he governs the way Bernie Sanders would have.
Say more about that.
Well, I mean, he's taking shares of companies, public companies, wrapping them into the government.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a draconian trade policy that seeks to isolate us from the world.
Mm-hmm.
These are Bernie things.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's projecting, or at least he thinks he's projecting, American power outward in foreign policy in a way that Sanders never would have. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So domestically,
Right.
You're getting one weird thing, and internationally, you're getting another weird thing. And they don't really match up into a coherent whole, right? There's no governing ideology that you can unpack and understand, right? With
first principles.
Reagan or with even Jimmy Carter, right? It was easy to understand how those guys would react to certain stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
But with Trump, you never really know. And everybody's always on edge because of it. And this is why we have a lot of trouble in the economic realm, because people who are worried about economic things require certainty.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know what the markets are going to look like in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
so they can make their plans accordingly and move about their business. And they can't do that right now.
And look, I'm a staunch free trader. You know that.
Yeah, me too.
And,
me too.
And when he started, talking about tariffs early on, I said to people, look, speaking as an economist from an economic perspective, this is bad news. Here's why. But I defended him. I said, look, it's entirely possible that what he's doing has nothing to do with economics, but rather it's strategic. Because if you look at the numbers, our trade, although tariffs were pretty low across the boards, our trading partners were imposing tariffs that were higher on us than we were imposing on them. So you could make the argument that it was strategic, he was going to bring them to the table and get rid of the tariffs entirely. And in terms of a strategy, I thought, okay, maybe so. Except if you're going to play a strategy like that, it's got to be very clear to the trading partner. You either do X or else this other thing is going to happen to you. And the closer you come to doing what you're supposed to do, the better we'll be treating you. And you don't see that. Instead, you see randomness of we're going to impose a 130% tariff, and then 12 hours later, well, it's going to be 70%, and then later on, something else.
Really 30. And look, the president, and we've said this before, he doesn't have the constitutional authority to behave this way. Although Congress does not hold him to account. So, we are where we are. I got hate mail on that very point. I get hate mail on that very point. I don't know
I saw that,
why.
and I responded to it, actually. I usually don't respond to your hate mail. I just laugh. I mean, I'm laughing at you.
Nothing new there.
But this guy, it's let me, because I want to defend you here. This gentleman wrote, and I'm sensitive to the Trump derangement syndrome. I don't. It bothers me when people perceive that when I say we're, usually it's you, are displaying that. But here we had a listener write in and say that James is misrepresenting Trump's response to Ontario's commercial of inaccurate portrayal of Ontario's commercial about Reagan. And so I went and I looked. I saw the ad that Ontario put out. I saw the White House response to the ad. I read commentary from PBS, BBC, Wall Street Journal. All of that, everything I saw was entirely consistent with what you said. So I have no idea, unless I'm missing something, I have no idea where this claim of Trump derangement syndrome is coming from, other than the only thing I can point to is that you said something that somebody doesn't like.
Right. And we've gotten to the point now where Trump derangement syndrome isn't Rosie O'Donnell jumping up and down and losing her mind on TV. It's anybody offering a criticism of any kind.
Yeah, that's not healthy. It's not healthy.
Well, and look, by that standard, I had Biden derangement syndrome and Obama derangement syndrome because all I do is criticize people in power. And if you think I'm criticizing Trump too much, just wait until there's a Democrat in the White House and you're going to love it because I'm going to do exactly the same thing.
We're happy to announce that Civil members can join me and James for a new lecture series, Words and Numbers Live. Words and Numbers Live is a members-only series in which James and I talk about issues in politics, philosophy, and economics. We take a deeper dive and then invite listeners for a live Q&A session. In this week's session, which is available now, we talk about unintended consequences. To participate in this exclusive series, subscribe to Civil at civil.com. That's CIVL.com. When you log into civil.com, you'll find an archive of our past lecture series, as well as the collection of all our episodes of Words and Numbers and announcements about upcoming lectures in our new Words and Numbers Live series. Subscribe to Civil for $5 a month or $50 for an annual subscription.
There are a couple of things that really pissed me off in the last 2 days, as I started to say before, not realizing that you had lots more to talk about. Well, I had no idea. And one is from the Ass Clown existential comments on Twitter. And I'm still going to call it Twitter, and I'm still going to say that this is a tweet.
Right? Yeah, X doesn't work.
X is just silly, and if you say it's a post, everybody thinks you're on Facebook. So Existential Comics tweeted, "Why are ethics questions always like, is it ethical to steal bread to feed your starving family, and not, is it ethical to hoard bread when families are starving?" You want to take a crack at that one?
Well, I mean, they're both ethical questions, right?
Well, I think you went right to the wrong level on this. You can't hoard bread because it spoils. bread rots.
Sure.
There's this thing called mold that you can't hoard it. It molds. And this is exactly the point, right? You've got to move product. And then money offers a store of value. This is exactly the problem that John Locke talked about in the second treatise. When you grow apples and you put them all in baskets and you eat lots of apples, all your other apples rot because you can't do anything with apples. And then if we barter, well, you can only barter with somebody who's got something you want. But if we, have money, that solves all these problems. But in solving these problems, you've guaranteed that some people are going to be very, very, very good at buying and selling things. And those people are going to get wealthier than other people. But the upshot is that we all have bread, apples, and every other damn thing. Right? We're all better off for it because we have food to eat and houses to live in and cars, et cetera, et cetera.
And let me add here because this argument about hoarding, and it's always applied somehow to people who have lots of money. Step back and think about this. So you and I are here, and you offer me something that I want. Go back to the apples, and we have money. And so I give you money and you give me apples. And I have something you want. I have, pears, and you give me money and I give you pears. And that's the way it works. Now, suppose over time you keep giving me more and more apples. So I give you money, you give me apples. But you're not asking for my pears in return. And so not only do I have lots of apples, but I've got lots of pears because James hasn't asked for them. And you're sitting on a pile of dollars. How are we pointing to you and saying you're hoarding? I'm the one who got all the goods.
Here's where it gets interesting, because I thought I had finally come across an example of actual hoarding by an actual billionaire. And I thought, oh boy. I finally found the great counterexample to the things we talk about. And you and I love counterexamples, right? We love to say, look, in general, this is stupid. But here's an instance where it really happened. And people were claiming all over Twitter and Facebook that when Henry Ford died, his family went in and opened the safe and found $700 million in cash. Now,
actual cash.
Yeah. And that those are 1947 dollars. The AI I looked into tells me that Henry Ford's net worth at the time was $200 million. Complete net worth. So $700 million in his personal safe. No, punkin', that did not happen. Now, $200 million, that's quite a lot. That's 188 to 199 billion in today's dollars. So, okay, he died with quite a lot. Where did this idiotic story come from? Well, it turns out Henry Ford had an aversion to using banks. He just didn't like banking. And he always kept lots of cash on hand at the Ford Motor Company. So when they had to do something, they could pay for it in cash and not take out a loan. That was a business practice. Upon his death, most of his wealth went to the Ford Foundation. So there's your whole story, right?
Yeah.
700 million. He was hoarding money. Well, he didn't even have 700 million. He didn't even have a third of 700 million. And, well, come to find out, none of it's true. He just tried to avoid banking on the business side of his life, which I think is kind of silly. But if you want to avoid that expense and you've got the wherewithal to do it, well, go ahead. Right. That's a business decision. Probably not the smartest one, but probably not the dumbest one either, given that they had just, when he died in 47, the stock market had crashed in 29 and we had a protracted depression. Right. That's going to impact his thinking on these matters. So, my own grandparents didn't trust banks ever, having lived through that period. So there you go. Hoarding, right? Everybody talks about it. Nobody actually does it. The end.
Well, I would imagine it does happen, but it happens, oddly, the people who are doing it are the preppers.
Yeah, that's right.
But they're not hoarding enough to have any major impact on anybody.
Yeah, no palpable effect on the economy.
Yeah.
That it may have a palpable effect on the economy if the preppers are correct. But,
right, yeah.
But that will only come later. Anyway, we move on from that was incidentally the foolishness of the week. Oh, no, it wasn't. See how stupid it was? It should have been the foolishness of the week, but we've got something even dumber. And it comes from our friend Wes Westmoreland, who sent it to me just a couple of days ago. And I thought, what stupid things are they doing in North Carolina that Wes is telling me about today? But no, Wes wants me to know about the stupid thing they're doing in Tolleson, Arizona. Here we go. The voters in Tolleson, Arizona, approved a $125 million school bond last November. And I just want to say that and I mean this literally, every single time I am presented with the option to vote yes or no on a bond issue, I vote no. I don't care what it's for. I don't care how much people say they need it. I don't care about anything. You've got one no vote baked right in that you have to overcome. And I encourage every single person I know to do the same thing, because bond issues are almost always a bunch of nonsense. And the good people of Tolleson, thinking, as good people would, that the schools need the money, voted yes on this. And then the Tolleson Union High School District decided to move ahead with an $80 million new domed football stadium for their high school football team.
Oh, wow.
There are teams in the NFL that don't have domed stadiums.
A domed stadium for a high school?
For a high school. $80 million of the $125 million that the good people of Tolleson decided functionally to tax themselves. A bond is a tax on yourself.
James, do you know where Tolleson is in Arizona?
No.
If I'm looking at the right one, I just asked population Tolleson, Arizona. It can't be right. It says 9,300 people.
No, that can be right. That can be right. There are little towns all over the place here, and some of them cluster together to make larger metropolitan areas. I can give you a little more information on Tolleson. 22% of the district's students are proficient in math, and 22%, and 26% proficient in English. You would think.
You would think that. Well, I'm sure the
they'd
voters thought we're gonna borrow $125 million to get those numbers up.
Then maybe our children won't be so damn stupid.
Okay, so I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, you're correct. There's a greater area there. The high school district has 225,000 students. Excuse me. I don't know students,
people.
but the high school district area is 225,000.
Yeah. How far away are they from me?
I do not know.
Well, you got the map open.
I don't have a map. I'm talking to AI.
Yeah. Why do we even ask anymore? You have an ongoing relationship with AI that surpasses every human relationship you have ever had.
But there's this, we keep saying over and over, I say we, Americans keep saying over and over that we aren't spending enough on schools. In fact, I know it was the case, at least as of 5 years ago, that Arizona teachers were the lowest paid school teachers in the country.
Yep.
And I don't mean by a small amount. At the time I was looking,
you back then a starting salary was, I think, $29,000.
Yeah, at the time I was looking, which was about 5 years ago or so, the typical salary for a public school teacher in Arizona was round about 20 to 30,000 in that range, versus in Pennsylvania it was 60 to 80,000. Now Pennsylvania I think was the third highest paid, but nonetheless.
Yeah, and this is a rough state to be a teacher in.
But
and I've known a number of very good teachers here.
But in a state, I have as well.
I don't know why they do it.
In a state like that, you put a referendum for a bond in front of the voters, and of course they're going to assume that at the least you're going to raise the teachers' salaries and preferably more educational things to get those numbers up. I'm sure it never occurred to anybody, save for the people who wrote the question, will you give us $125 million, that they were going to build a domed stadium.
Well, 80 of 125, almost 2/3, were immediately set aside to build a stadium. And I can almost guarantee you, Ant, that there will be a budget shortfall in the building of the stadium, and they will go back to the voters for more, because that's what they do. And this is why I've just gotten a bond issue referendum in the mail for me to vote on, and I will be voting no. I don't even look to see what it's for because it doesn't matter. A bond issue is a government saying, we don't have enough of your money to do what we want to do. Figure it out. Just go figure it out. You get my taxes. Go figure it out. You can't have any more. And I think a lot of people see bonds like this, and they might start thinking kind of like I do. But anyway, we switch now, Ant, to the government shutdown, something that you and I really haven't talked about at all. I guess we've become so blasé about government shutdowns that we don't even bother. And I can tell you that my wife and son went to a park recently on a road trip, and they were not allowed in. A variation of the Washington Monument strategy, right? When everything just gets closed down with police tape. And they texted me, they said, oh, there's police tape across the entryway. And I said, can't you just get under it? Probably not keeping you out. And she said, well, there's a park ranger's truck just past the tape.
Oh, right. They're paying the park rangers.
I said, are you sure? Because I don't think those guys are getting paid. And she said, it might be a cardboard cutout as I look at it. And I said, so why aren't you in the park? And of course, the wife is not a lawbreaker, and I routinely am. So she did not do what I just would have naturally done, and she called it a day. That's the outward manifestation of the shutdown. And I can say that I don't feel the effects of a shutdown right now. I'm pretty sure you don't either, although living in D.C., you may see the effects more than I do.
Yeah, I don't feel them because I'm not involved with government or anything that is involved with government. But this is the first time I've been in the environs of D.C. when there's been a shutdown. And boy, are the people around here feeling it. You could see it in the real... It's not just a shutdown. It's a shutdown coming after all the Doge cuts. The real estate market is all in tatters. I have a friend who works for the federal government. And so I was asking him about this. And he said he has not been furloughed. In fact, he won't be furloughed. So he still has to go into work. However, he's not being paid.
Well, yeah.
So
and we're going to...
He gets the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, worst of both worlds. And I want to get to that in a very specific context in a couple of minutes. But I want to start with this other thing that has both terrified one group of people and enraged another group of people. And that's the announcement that SNAP, or what we euphemistically call food stamp payments, will not go out November 1st. We're all done.
Is that true?
Yeah, no more money in that pot. And 42 million human beings in the United States get food stamps.
That's a mandatory spending item.
The administration has announced that no federal food aid will go out November 1. So let's work with that assumption at least.
Okay, but I'm wondering technically if it's not a matter that the money's not there, but rather he's not paying the people who would be moving that money out.
Yeah.
So in effect, I don't know. So same end result. The money's not going out.
Yeah, I don't know what the technicalities are, but I do know a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first is that, geez, Ant, we've got 42 million people on food aid. We only have 330 million people. That's how many now? 1 in 8? 1 in 8 Americans are on food assistance? That is unsustainable. I can tell you that there are always going to be people who need food assistance. It will never be 1/8 of the population.
Yeah.
So there's something going on here, and it's going to have to be addressed, right? And there was a time You remember it and I remember it, when people talked about the deserving and the undeserving poor. And we washed that out of our vernacular because it made the undeserving poor feel really bad about themselves. And I think I'm ready to start saying things like, do you deserve this? Are you able to work? This gets to the second point that I want to talk about in this very context, because in the Trump years, we have normalized cruelty. People are being quite rotten to each other. And you see all over social media, well, there shouldn't be food stamps anyway. To hell with you. Well, really? Because when you find out that considerably better than half the people on food assistance are in fact working. They're trying, right? They're doing what they can. It's just not working out. That's what we would call the deserving poor, right? People who are in the mix, giving it all they've got, right? They're just on hard times.
Right.
Right? And they might be on food stamps for a while and then not, and then back and then not. But hopefully the trajectory is upward to the point where they can become perfectly self-sustaining and maybe in their hearts thankful to the rest of us for the help we extended.
Mm-hmm.
I have no beef with people like that, none whatsoever. I do have a beef with people who want more and more and more and refuse to do anything to get it. And I think we're going to have to start differentiating. If we're at 1 in 8, we're going to have to start differentiating.
Well, and let me maybe put some context to that 1 in 8 number, because I don't know how they're counting this. If you say if they're counting people, not households, which
they're counting people,
would think they are, 42 million, figure a decent chunk of those are going to be children, right?
I
don't know how many.
Also, children
and also the elderly.
The elderly.
So let's say, just for the sake of argument, half of the people of those 42 million are either children or elderly. Well, now you're down to 6%. Because the children are elderly, I wouldn't, they're relying on somebody else who hasn't stepped up, or circumstances, or what have you. Yeah.
Failing.
So I would say really the number you're talking about is not 1 in 8, but 1 in 16.
Well, and we're going to have to figure it all out. It's going to take more work than we just did.
You know, I worked for many years, still do, with my parish and the many things that we do, and one of them is helping the poor. And this came up was one Christmas some years ago when, we were giving out things, and somebody said, well, there are people here who are coming for presents or food or what have you, and clearly they don't need it. And an older woman said, you have to go through the greedy to get to the needy. I thought, wow, that's a great way to look at it. Okay, fine, you're greedy, you don't need this, but we'll give it to you, you go, and that's... Now you're out of the way, I can get to the needy people I need to get to.
Yeah. And I have no problem with a private charity doing that. I have a lot of problem with the federal government doing that.
Yeah, and people will say, well, but private charities don't do enough. But I think part of the problem is we turn to government first. Mm-hmm. And government crowds out to, we can argue to what degree, but it does crowd out private charity. We should be doing it the other way. Turn to private charity first, and then let the government pick up the pieces that are left.
Yeah, look, I think some form of workfare is in order. I really do. If you're gonna get a handout from the government, here's your crappy job we're going to expect you to go do, even if it's cleaning the highways or something, right? Just something. But anyway, there's more to the story than just this. Although this is going to be a problem, right? Because you're going to have, regardless of how many people might not deserve this, you're going to have a bunch of hungry people as of November 1st.
Right.
And hungry people do desperate things.
Mm-hmm.
They do. And I can guarantee you that one of the first things that's going to ripple through the news is people stealing from grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing that's going to ripple through the news once people realize that that's not as easy as it seems They're just going to start taking shopping carts from people as they go from the door of the store to their car.
Mm-hmm.
Because those are the obvious victims.
Mm-hmm.
These things are going to happen if people get hungry enough. So you've got that coming November 1. And then you've got flight delays. Because 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 Transportation Security Administration officers must work without pay.
Mm-hmm.
So all the air traffic controllers and the TSA guys. Now, I'm going to make the argument that we could probably live without the TSA guys. But the air traffic control system, that's one of the
need
very
those guys.
That is one of the very few things I point to and say, this is why you want a federal government right here. They're being asked to work without pay. And you know what happens when people are asked to work without pay? They don't show up for work as much.
Right.
They take days off. They get sick and don't go. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't either. I don't go to work if somebody's not paying me. That's video game time, right? That's music time. I'm going to do something I truly enjoy if I don't have the opportunity to make a living. And so we've got think about this. And look, even right now we have kind of like rolling groundings in Houston and Dallas and a couple other airports right now. I think 8,000 flights were delayed yesterday. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Do you know what happens on November 27th, 3 weeks after the food runs out and 3 weeks after 13,000 air traffic controllers don't get paid?
Isn't that the heaviest travel day of the year?
Indeed it is. And the biggest eating day of the year.
Right.
Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
What are all these poor people without food and all these air traffic controllers without pay? What's that going to yield around Thanksgiving? Chaos.
Well, certainly
Utter
it's not going
chaos.
to go on that long. Do you think?
Well, and that's why I think it's not going to go that long. I think there is an obvious day that this nonsense needs to be squared away. And it's Thanksgiving. I think it can go until maybe a week or 5 days before Thanksgiving. But it can't go past that. Not without
I'd
catastrophe.
really be surprised to see it go that far.
I would like, and I'm going to temper my language here, because I don't want people to suffer. I want to make that perfectly clear. But I would like to see the backlash of a ruined Thanksgiving. I think that might teach politicians a lesson that they wouldn't otherwise learn. When they take away things that are important to people on a deep personal level, and we've said this before, at least I have, Thanksgiving is likely my favorite day of the year. It's a fantastic day. It has everything that I love wrapped up into one day. Probably not this year, as my two beautiful daughters have moved out of the house and are very unlikely to make it back, right? So the gathering of family, probably not going to happen. But a fantastic dinner, no expectations on the other people in your family, right? It's not a gift-giving opportunity / mess. Football on my TV, temperate weather outside my door. This is a wonderful American holiday. And if government ruins it even once, people may never trust government again.
Well, that would be a plus.
Where you started, they're already thinking that the federal government is too powerful. Well, part of being too powerful is not doing the things that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to get away with it. That's probably the most pernicious form of power. That you can do the things that you're situated to do, and you just simply refuse, because who's going to hold you accountable?
And to people who will say, well, these guys are constantly talking about the government being too big, and now they're complaining about the shutdown. Let me remind you that government shutdowns actually cost more money than keeping the government open.
That's
so
right.
this is achieving nothing on the economic side.
And why don't we put a graph up right here? This is an easy one, because we see it every single time the government shuts down. Spending flatlines. And then the minute the shutdown is over, it increases well past the point that it would have been otherwise. And then we wait for the next shutdown and it flatlines and then it goes right back up again. And why does it go right back up again? Because everybody and every contractor gets back paid. It's not like the people who worked or who lost out on contracts during this period have to eat that loss. We as taxpayers have to eat that loss. And we just pay for it later.
So what you're looking at is, and this comes from my beloved Fred, this is the Federal Reserve Economic Database. What you're seeing is the federal debt going back to roughly 2010, right? So this is straight up, the federal debt in dollars, is what you see. And of course, the thing goes up as you go along. But as you look at this graph, as you move from left to right, notice there are several places where it's flat, and then it jumps, and then it's flat, and then it jumps. And there's a very big one there at 2020, but I believe that was due to COVID. But you can see one later on in 2021, it's flat and then it jumps. Now, what's going on here? The flat is the federal government hitting its debt ceiling. So, of course, it hits a debt ceiling, so it can't borrow any more money. And you get an effect not dissimilar from the shutdown. They don't necessarily always shut down, but you've got the same thing of all of a sudden we're in stasis because we can't spend any more money. And the thing gets resolved, and when it gets resolved, the spending resumes. And you would think, okay, well, spending resumes, but we saved money because we were shut down for those days or we weren't spending or whatever it is. No. All that spending gets pushed off to the end. So once the debt ceiling is raised or once the government is now turned back on, all of that spending that should have happened and didn't all happens at once.
All at once.
So, you talk about the federal workers getting their back pay. Yeah, they get their back pay. So yes, they're not getting paid now, but they are going to get that in the future. Actually, there is a group who is going to get the fuzzy end of the sucker here, and those are people who work for the federal government on a contracting basis. They aren't federal employees.
Some contracts don't include this. Other contracts do.
Right, and I start off by talking about my friend who works for the federal government, and he has not been furloughed. He's required to go into work, but he's not being paid. So, I mean, that we had a name for that 150 years ago, and we outlawed it.
Yes, we did. We did. Now we just say it sucks to be him.
But it gets worse. If you're a furloughed worker, so you're not getting paid and you don't come into work, you are forbidden from getting work on the side. So you just have to sit there without a paycheck, not doing anything. Yeah. Without a paycheck and not doing anything.
And coming around full circle, getting all the way back to the food problem, a number of federal workers, lower level federal workers, and a number of contractors and all the workers who rely on the contractors, they're eviscerating the food banks in and around D.C.
Yeah.
And there's a massive shortage there. Well, I mean, you can see this is how a problem starts. And you're seeing things starting to have a ripple effect. And it will get worse. And because we've normalized cruelty, people say things like, I don't care. Well, okay, don't care. Sooner or later, violence will show up at your door if you continue not to care. So there's a perfectly self-interested reason to care. And Aunt, you've heard me say this over and over and over, lo these many years. I actually believe, and I want people to hear the words that I'm saying, I actually believe that welfare is the way we buy the cooperation of the poor.
Yeah.
It keeps the poor from revolting.
Mm-hmm.
And if that makes me sound like an anti-capitalist, I don't care. It makes me a realistic human being who can see what a political system does to maintain order. And when that breaks down, the order that it was keeping will break down too. So be careful. Be careful how cruel you want to be, and be careful what your policy wishes are. Just be careful, because terrible things could in fact happen.
James and I are delighted to be working with Civil. For years, we have been pushing people to think about how we can make the world a better place. Civil's mission of upgrading society fits exactly with what James and I have been talking about for years. Civil helps us by allowing us to do what we do best, which is researching topics that are important and communicating these to our listeners in ways we hope they find enjoyable. To see Civil's extensive list of content, including our podcast Words and Numbers and our new lecture series Words and Numbers Live, visit civil.com. That's CIVL.com. I want to go back to the shutdown itself because, frankly, I've forgotten why it shut down. What's the point here? There's some impasse.
Yeah, Democrats want a bunch of crap that the Republicans don't want to give them. Chief among them, it seems, if everybody's telling the truth, is money to support the Affordable Care Act in ways into the future that would otherwise disappear. Subsidies for the ACA. Mm-hmm. And Republicans are saying, no, we're not going to do that. And Democrats are saying, well, people's healthcare costs are skyrocketing to exactly what Harrigan said they were back in 2017.
Right.
You might recall, Ant, when I said in 2017 that in order to get health care for my family of 5, because I no longer had a job after Strata closed down, and I was mandated to buy health care. You might remember you had to. No choice in the matter.
Affordable Care Act required you to have health care.
Required you to have it. And all I wanted was catastrophic insurance. So if somebody fell down and broke a leg, I'm covered. But if we have to go in for a case of the flu, I'll pay for it. But you couldn't have that.
Right.
That was no longer allowed. You had to have not insurance, but coverage. And between the premiums and the deductibles, I was going to be $35,000 out of pocket before a single dime was covered. So it was cheaper for me to say, well, no, we're not doing that, and to just pay the fine. It was way cheaper.
And this was after the Affordable Care Act was passed.
Yes, this was a direct result of the Affordable Care Act. And then they figured out a way to subsidize. All the Obama fanboys called me a liar. There's no, you're just lying to make a point. Trust me, that was the best plan.
You had Obama derangement syndrome.
I did. That was the best plan I could find. There were far worse ones, but that was the best. And I've been seeing lately people presenting that very same math, that $32,000 to $35,000 between premiums and deductibles right now, and the Democrats, knowing who their base kind of is, are looking at that saying, oh, no, we can't have that. Now, oddly, we've had a bit of a reversion in terms of the parties, right? The working class is becoming ever more Republican and the upper class is becoming ever more Democrat. So things are really changing there. And I dare say, when Trump says no to that, a bunch of his people are going to be on the ass end of that screw. And they just haven't figured that out yet. Kind of like the farmers ended up paying for the tariffs in the form of no Chinese market anymore, right? And this sort of thing. So he's carving into his own base with some of this behavior. And sooner or later, it becomes so obviously painful that you have to stop doing it as a politician.
Okay, so that's my follow-up question. The average voter, and I stress average, looking at this, sees the government shutdown, not doing the things it's supposed to do, and the Republicans in control of Congress, in control of the White House. Now, I know there's fine print there about you need to get a bill through the Senate and you need a supermajority, which the Republicans don't have. Therefore, the Democrats can stop legislation even though they're a minority. But that's splitting hairs for the average voter.
For the average voter, it absolutely is. For the average voter will say, and I think reasonably so, you have the presidency, you have the House, you have the Senate. Just go do something. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. I want to push back a little bit on supermajority. That's a term. There are things that would be supermajorities. I think 2/3, 3/4, 66 or 75 in the Senate, but you need 60, which means you gotta get your own people on board uniformly, and you gotta peel off 6 or 7 Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't do that, maybe you don't deserve to govern.
Right.
I mean, there's got to be something you can offer to 6 or 7 Democrats that would peel them off. You've already got John Fetterman, right, from Pennsylvania, a guy who I actually quite enjoy watching. He's always a bit of a wild card.
Well, they may not have him much longer. Isn't he switching parties?
There's always scuttlebutt, but who knows? Sooner or later, he has to face the voters in Pennsylvania, and I don't know if they're going to like him enough to reelect him. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But, 60 is not a supermajority. It's just more than, it's a bit more than half.
Sure.
And if you can't get it done, I mean, come on. You can't get it done. And we're approaching a time here where something's going to give. I can feel it happening. And Thanksgiving is a hard stop on this. So, who's going to give? And what are they going to give? And that's going to be real fun to watch. I don't know.
I can't imagine the Democrats giving in. If they
Not
do,
when they can make Trump look stupid, right?
Well, it'll send a signal that the Republicans can just run all over them. That we're effectively one party, at least until the midterms.
And yet, if the Democrats become perceived as the party that ended food stamps at Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Then again, we're one party. Right, yeah.
The midterms aren't going to go well for them at all.
Yeah.
And trust me, everybody is thinking more about the midterms than they're thinking about people who need food.
Yeah.
They're a pack of sociopaths. You don't get to where they all are if you're not a sociopath. Mm-hmm. I think looking at Congress broadly, there may be a handful who aren't. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that. I'll just leave it at that. These are the kind of people who seek power. Who's not seeking power? Me and you. Good God. Good God. I actually was asked yesterday by someone who has the ability to make good on this if I wanted my name floated for a job in the administration.
Really?
I can't imagine.
Did you? And you said no?
I can't imagine.
Huh.
I don't.
What
in
kind
the
of,
end,
Can you say what kind of job?
No. In the end, I'm positive they wouldn't want me. So there's that, right? If they got to know me, they wouldn't want me at all. But no, I can't do that. I just can't.
Yeah.
What can you say?
Recall what you and I were together? It was, I want to say 10 years ago. I was giving a talk somewhere in Pittsburgh, and at the end of the thing, my handler said, "Oh, we got some people who want to meet you." I said, "Fine." People like to, talk after the thing. So I go in, and it's a room of Republican donors, and they want to float my name to replace whatever Republican congressman was from that area was resigning. And I thought about it a bit, and I said to the people, I can't. It would be too much like working for the enemy.
Yeah.
And they said, the Republicans are the enemy? I said, no. Government is the enemy.
And I was a little disappointed then because you and I had agreed that I would be your chief of staff if you moved forward with it.
Right. Yeah, but then I'd just be a puppet, right?
That's right.
We both know how that goes.
That's right. Chief of staff for a congressman is a job I could clearly do. That's one I would want. Because we would have no other staff. The entire budget would flow in the form of my salary. And then we would sit in the office.
Say no to everything.
And say no to everything. That's right. It would be a very, very easy gig to have. Being congressman, if I were the other guy, Boy, I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
I joke about running for Congress every few years, saying that I will simply vote no for, it's kind of like the bond issue that we started with.
Mm-hmm.
I will simply vote no for everything that adds a dime to the federal debt, which is literally every spending bill.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm an automatic no. You have to overcome that. And if I can get 20 more people into the House of Representatives who are automatic no's, trust me, we control the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm. Right.
20 people could control the entire process if they had the nerve to just put their boots in the ground and say no all the time, without fail, without question. If everybody knows that's going to be your answer, and all these other weirdos too, now they have no choice but to behave better. They have no choice, because people start saying, look, these 20 people said you couldn't do it. You did it anyway. The debt went up again. Now we're going to make it so there are 30 people, and then 40, and before you know it, right? That's how internal revolutions happen.
And we got Ron Paul. He did that. But that's it.
And
I haven't heard of any other congressman.
Justin Amash did it.
Sure. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Thomas Massey, to some degree, to a lesser degree, but to a very significant degree, still does it. Rand Paul in the Senate behaves this way. Some years, not other years. So there are some, but in the end, I'm not getting elected saying that, because what I'm also saying is I'm not going to be bringing pork back to the district. Right? You're not going to get all these subsidies and grants and every other damn thing. And, until you break your addiction on these things, you're going to have problems like we have right now. And those problems will get worse as the debt escalates, because the interest on the debt escalates as well, which means we have to borrow even more to pay for what we've already borrowed. And, well, I mean, there's no happy end in sight here. So when you think about grounded flights all over the country at Thanksgiving and people who are literally hungry at the same time, many of them children who have no say in the matter. That's what you get. I'm not saying that we should just throw money at everything, but I'm saying when you stop the flow, there are repercussions, and they get worse and worse and worse over time.
It's not at all different than going cold turkey after you've been on a drug for a long time.
Yeah, that's right. That's probably the absolute best analogy.
Yeah, you want to get off the drug, absolutely, but there are ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I will cheerfully admit the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is quit smoking. By far, it's not even close. It's that bad. People out there who used to smoke know exactly what I'm talking about. It's miserable. How do you get off the government teat when it's so profoundly huge and covers so many different things? I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I do, but I don't know how to do it in anything approaching a painless fashion. I guess I would encourage people to keep watching Argentina, because they seem to be moving in the right direction. And Javier Milei, in an election, I guess it was yesterday, was hoping to get 30% of the vote and got 40.
Wow.
People are starting to give him the benefit of the doubt. Is it deserved? Hey, I don't know. I'm not in Argentina. From a distance, sure looks that way. I'd love to have him on, but his English just isn't where it would need to be. He doesn't do interviews in English.
We got to get an interpreter. We got to get him on somehow.
Yeah. I also, and I guess we're actually done now, right, talking about this. So let's just have a minute and talk about who I've been inviting to come on the podcast, because I'm looking for people who are interesting, right, and who are legitimately famous. And I asked Dee Snider yesterday, the singer for the metal band Twisted Sister, who said something on, who said said something on Twitter that I thought, hey, that's interesting. And I caught him there, and I thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if he could come on and talk about the 1985 PMRC fiasco when he testified in Senate? He was fantastic. So brilliant in front of a crowd full of very hostile people. He just walked in a pair of jeans and a kind of a leather and chains look and laid it down for them in a way that was so intelligent, they all shut up. It was the weirdest triumvirate I've ever seen.
You got to help me out here. What is the PMRC fiasco?
The Parental Music Resource Coalition.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And it was John Denver, Frank Zappa, and Dee Snider. Three people who would never have been in the same room otherwise showed up and let those people have it. And it was beautiful. And I would love Dee Snider to come on and talk about that. It actually comes up in our discussions often. Right? You and I have mentioned this in passing probably 50 times. And then I went and saw a guy, John Ondrasik is his name, and he performs under the name Five for Fighting. Had a gigantic hit called Superman, another gigantic hit called 100 Years. Superman became known as the 9/11 song. He played it at the 9/11 concert and this sort of thing. And he was in Tucson last week, and I went and saw him, and I was just blown away by how great the show was. So I sent him a tweet, and I said, hey, man, you should come on my podcast. I want to talk about your songwriting process, why you do what you are, the economics of touring, and what was the third one? Oh, being an outsider in the culture, because he's a conservative, and yet he makes his living as a singer. He performed here in Tucson with a string quartet, and it was stunning. It was just stunning. Prior to the concert, I sent him a tweet inviting him and his crew and the band over to my house for dinner, but I never heard back. But when I pushed him a little bit to come on the podcast, I got a thumbs up sign on Twitter, and I kind of take that as meaning I could start harassing him about it now.
Good.
Snyder,
do.
No sign at all. But, we're looking to have these fascinating type of people on. So if you happen to know a fascinating person, and hear me when I say this, with a much bigger reach than we already have, right? We're looking to build an audience. And the only way you build an audience is to go find different people. So saying, oh, yeah, you should have our friend Phil Magnus on again. Well, we are going to have Phil Magnus on again, but everybody who knows Phil already knows us, and vice versa. So who out there is fascinating who does not know us? That's who we want to talk to. Mm-hmm. Trust us, we'll find something interesting to get into. If you know somebody out there, instead of hate mail, send this kind of mail to wordsandnumberspodcast@gmail.com. See, I even know the address.
Well, I've been saying it for so many years.
And I have to unsubscribe from every mailing list that we get put on by the weasels out there who just can't stop subscribing us to all manner of drivel. The Marxists of like Central Cleveland or whatever it was, that was inspired. Whoever did that, my metaphorical hat is off to you. Until next time, man, take care of yourself, be well, be good, and be nice to each other. See you next time.
See you next time, Jets. At Words and Numbers, we spend a lot of time talking about what's going on in the economy and the government, but fundamentally all of this boils down to one thing. The greatest threat facing modern society is a lack of respect. The people who disagree somehow find it difficult, if not impossible, to discuss their differences in a civil manner. We at Civil are interested in upgrading civilization by encouraging people to engage with new ideas and ultimately to engage civilly with each other. If you share this idea, please join us by subscribing at civil.com. That's CIVL.com.